Prologue. Arrival. There are places in the world where silence is not empty. It hums, it whispers, it waits. The village of Clyavina lay hidden between hills and forests, where no map was quite correct, and no road ever stayed the same. For centuries, travelers passed it by, if they saw it at all. Some said the forest grew back overnight, covering paths that led too deep. Others said the villagers themselves erased the roads, afraid of what might find its way in. Or what might find its way out. It was early autumn when Dr. Elias Ward, a young folklorist from the city, arrived there. He had spent years studying local legends, stories of bells that rang without wind, of voices calling through the fog. Clyavina, he was told, was the last place where such tales still lived, passed from trembling lips beside dying fires. When he reached the village, it was already dusk. The air smelled of pine and smoke. Houses leaned inward, like old men whispering to each other. And from somewhere, far beyond the tree line, came a faint chime. Just one note, carried by the wind. A bell. But no church stood in Clyavina anymore. Chapter 1. The Legend of the Hollow. That evening, Elias found lodging in the home of an old woman named Anya. She spoke little, but her eyes followed him as he unpacked his books and notes. When he mentioned his research, her expression darkened. "You shouldn't write about that bell, sir. Words have a way of waking things best left sleeping," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Elias smiled politely, the way academics do when superstition challenges reason. He asked her to tell him what she knew. Anya hesitated, staring at the window, as if listening to the forest itself. They say, "Long ago, before the plague and the wars, a monastery stood in the hollow. The monks there forged a bell from iron and blood. When it rang, the dead would not stay buried," she whispered. Elias leaned forward, scribbling in his notebook. Anya's voice grew quieter. The bell was buried, deep under the earth, when the forest took the monastery. But sometimes, when the wind blows from the east, you can still hear it, calling. Not for prayer, but for those who listen. Elias asked if anyone had ever gone looking for it. Anya shook her head. "Some did. None came back. The ground there isn't like other ground. It remembers." That night, Elias could not sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he heard a faint sound, distant but steady. The ringing of a single bell, echoing through the hollow, though no church stood nearby. He told himself it was only his imagination. But in the morning, when he looked outside, he saw footprints in the frost. Bare, human footprints, leading from the edge of the forest to his door, and stopping there. Chapter 9. The manuscript. The next morning, Elias awoke before dawn, restless and unsettled. The footprints had disappeared with the first light, leaving only a thin layer of frost over the ground. Despite the unease creeping in his chest, he was drawn to explore the forest's edge. Something in the hollow called to him, a voice older than the village itself. By midday, he had discovered an abandoned chapel hidden under centuries of ivy and moss. Its wooden door, swollen with rain and age, creaked open as though welcoming him. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint tang of decay. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, casting jagged patterns across the stone floor. Elias's eyes caught something among the rubble. A leather-bound manuscript, partially rotted but remarkably intact. He lifted it carefully, the weight of centuries pressing against his palms. The manuscript was written in a meticulous, almost obsessive hand, each letter curling like a living thing. Pages detailed the history of the monastery that once stood in the hollow, the monks who had vanished without record, and the bell they had forged from iron mixed with blood. Elias read of rituals meant to bind spirits, to keep them dormant beneath the forest floor. But alongside the instructions, there were warnings scrawled in the margins. Do not awaken. Do not call. Do not listen. Despite the warnings, Elias felt a growing fascination. He could not tear his eyes away from the descriptions of the bell's power, how a single ring could reach into the realm of the departed, how the hollow itself would answer to the call. Each word seemed to hum in his mind, the script vibrating as if alive. That evening, back in the room Anya had offered him, Elias pored over the manuscript by candlelight. Shadows stretched across the walls, flickering like restless spirits. As he read the final pages, the instructions for a summoning ritual became clear. It was not merely a legend, it was a procedure, precise and terrifying in its simplicity. A bell, some metal, a circle drawn on the ground, words spoken in the old tongue, and a warning. Once called, the bell does not forget the one who listened. Elias felt a chill as he realized the full weight of what he held. The bell in the hollow was not a story to record. It was a doorway, and he had found the key. His rational mind battled with the creeping obsession. Scholars are meant to uncover truth, he told himself. Was this not truth? A discovery older than any living memory? Night deepened, and the forest beyond his window became alive with movement. He could hear branches scraping, faint whispers curling through the darkness. Elias did not feel fear yet, only a strange, magnetic pull, urging him toward the hollow, where the monastery had once stood. He imagined the bell buried somewhere beneath roots and stone, waiting for him. He set the manuscript down, feeling the tremor of anticipation in his hands. Sleep would not come. His thoughts circled endlessly around the bell, the hollow, and the words that promised a glimpse of something beyond the veil. Somewhere deep in the forest, unseen, a chime rang, soft, distant, and impossible to locate. Elias heard it clearly, though no sound should have existed. The hollow was calling, and for the first time, he considered answering. Chapter 3. The night of the bell. Elias waited until the forest lay in complete darkness. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, and the only light came from the weak flame of his lantern. In his hands, he carried the items described in the manuscript: a small iron bell, a length of rope, and a piece of chalk to draw the circle. Each object felt heavier than it should, as if imbued with the memory of all those who had vanished before him. He chose a clearing near the old monastery site. The ground was uneven, littered with stones and roots, and the fog clung to it like a living thing. Elias drew the circle carefully, repeating the gestures the manuscript described. Every motion felt both ritualistic and instinctive, as though the forest itself guided his hands. When he placed the bell at the center, a silence descended so profound it seemed to press against his chest. He spoke the words aloud in the ancient tongue. The syllables felt strange on his lips, vibrating with a resonance he could feel deep in his bones. The air grew colder, denser. The fog thickened, curling around his legs and rising to meet his lantern light. At first, nothing happened. Elias's heart pounded, questioning every choice. Then came the faintest sound, a chime, delicate and distant. He froze, listening. It repeated, louder now, as if echoing through the hollow. The bell he held did not move, yet its tone resonated far beyond the clearing. A whispering rose from the fog. Not one voice, but many, ancient and layered. Elias could not understand the words, yet the meaning was clear. You have called us. You have listened. A tremor passed through the ground, and the fog twisted into shapes that were almost human, almost familiar, but wrong. Eyes glinted in the mist, too many and too dark. Elias stepped back, fear finally overtaking fascination. He tried to reverse the ritual, to undo what he had begun, but the manuscript offered no guidance for that. The whispers grew louder, circling him, drawing him toward the center of the hollow. The bell rang again, a single, pure note, and Elias felt a pull, as if something invisible had reached for him. He ran. The forest resisted, branches grabbing, roots tripping. He could still hear the chime, following him, echoing in the hollows of the hills. Behind him, the fog thickened, shaping itself into figures that paused at the edge of perception, vanishing whenever he looked directly. Elias did not stop until he reached the village. He found himself before Anya's home, breathless, covered in scratches and leaves. The old woman opened the door, eyes widening at his state, but she said nothing. She only looked toward the forest, as if she knew what had been awakened. Elias tried to speak, to explain, but no words came. The hollow had called, and he had answered. In the days that followed, he could hear it still. A faint chime carried on the wind, not from any bell, not from the monastery ruins, but from everywhere and nowhere. Every so often, in the quiet moments before sleep, the ringing would rise louder, insistent, as if calling for him again. And sometimes, when the fog rolled in over the village, he thought he saw shapes moving just beyond the tree line, watching, waiting. Elias knew he had opened something older than the forest, older than memory. He did not know its purpose, nor could he comprehend what might come. Only that it had been called. Only that it had heard him. And the hollow waited, patient as ever, for the next note to ring. Epilogue. The sound that never fades. Weeks passed, and life in Clyavina seemed to return to its quiet rhythm. Villagers went about their days as if nothing had changed. Yet Elias knew better. The hollow had not forgotten him. The bell's voice lingered, subtle but persistent, threading itself into every wind that brushed the hills. At night, he would sit by his window, staring into the fog, listening for the faint chime that now felt like a heartbeat. Sometimes it came closer, sharper, as if someone, or something, was walking just beyond the tree line. The forest no longer seemed merely a collection of trees. It was alive, aware, patient. It watched, it waited, and it remembered. Elias avoided the hollow, avoided the forest paths that once drew him in. Yet he could not rid himself of the sense that the bell had marked him, that its sound had become part of his own shadow. He would hear it when he thought of other things, a single note vibrating beneath his thoughts, under his pulse, reminding him that the hollow answers to those who listen. One evening, he awoke to a silence heavier than any he had felt before. The bell did not chime. The fog did not stir. And then he realized the absence itself was not empty. Something moved in the space between heartbeats, waiting to fill it. Elias left Clyavina soon after, carrying the manuscript with him, but the sound never truly left. On quiet nights, long after he had left the village behind, the faintest ringing would curl around his ears, a reminder that some calls cannot be undone, some doors cannot be closed, and some things, once awakened, never sleep again. The hollow waits, always. And somewhere, far beyond where anyone can see, the bell tolls, for those who dare to listen.